Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Professionals Pulse. I'm Farida Musaddi, the co founder and CEO of Alphateh Technologies Dubai. We at Alphateh are committed to pioneering advancements that streamline financial processes, enhance security measures, and create unparalleled user experiences. By leveraging emerging technologies and strategic collaborations, we are ready to reshape the future of finance. Our commitment is to revolutionize the fintech industry, paving the way for a more inclusive, efficient, and digitally driven financial ecosystem. On this episode today of the Professionals Pulse, we unveil the digital frontier. We look into the transformative realm of B2B payments, uncovering the innovations shaping the future of business success. Join us as we explore the dynamic landscape of digital transformation transactions, dissecting the strategies, technologies, and disruptions revolutionizing B2B payments. Listen to the latest fintech innovations as our podcast navigates the forefront of this evolving terrain, offering insights crucial for businesses striving to thrive in tomorrow's economic landscape. And today we have with us Mr. Balkrishna Pangam. Mr. Balkrishna Pangam is based in Singapore and has been right at the heart of the payment industry's transformations in acquiring and network processing across the region. He has been at the forefront of leading innovative changes in merchant acceptance digital solutions, disrupting norms and adding value to esteemed clients while striving to reduce cash usage and digitize payments. From pioneering direct banking channel capabilities to launching e commerce solutions, his journey from HDFC Bank to Amex, Cybersource, and Visa has been exhilarating. His blend of technical expertise in transaction processing and business leadership has driven innovative solutions engaging at CXO and regional leadership levels. He believes success stems from a dedicated team delivering great outcomes, acknowledging the support received while leading by example, fostering accountability, and honoring team efforts. A philosophy ingrained in his DNA, guiding him throughout his career. Mr. Balkrishna Pangam, welcome to our show, sir. It's a pleasure to have you here with us today.
Thank you. And likewise, it's a pleasure.
So, beginning with our podcast today, according to you, what does the term digital frontier mean in the context of B2B payments, and how is it revolutionizing the business landscape?
If you look at B2B payments, it has been around for the last as many years as I have been in the business and before. There have been certain organizations, networks who had taken lead in promoting B2B payments on card rails. But when we look at digitizing payments, that is something that has actually, exponentially grown in the last 5 to maybe at the most 10 years, and essentially in the last 5 years. And
Okay,
one of the reasons that has happened is the impact of COVID, where
correct.
digital payments has became a necessity. And
Absolutely
it was primarily the businesses that have felt the impact, and one of the reasons why they have shifted to B2B payments.
correct.
Now, when you look at the digital frontiers, right? That's something that I can look at in terms of how payments are going to get digitized for every individual, every small entity, in terms of business to large enterprise. And there are different solutions which are coming up, which have been rolled out in the last few years. And I think this is just the beginning. if I were to look at, internet payments, that was something that was, innovation many years back. Now
Correct.
we are talking about is payments which are based on API calls which are being made. We are talking about real time fast payments which have been offered. There are payments which are being talked about, cross border payments which are also across different networks coming together. And innovation is at the heart of this entire domain of payments, especially in the B2B space. At the
Correct.
same time, what I will say is that this particular focus on B2B has only happened in the last few years. Prior to that, the explosion that happened was primarily in the B2C space. And
Okay.
everybody, whoever was coming into the payments business, was focusing on B2C. So, from
Correct.
that perspective, what I can say is that B2B payments is just at the beginning of a huge growth in the next 3 to 5 years and beyond. And the numbers are really mind boggling. So,
Okay.
if you look at, for example, in Asia Pacific, I mean, the numbers that can be quoted is, up to a 50 to 55 trillion dollars worth of business that can be carded. In a country like India, where we are looking at, exponential growth, which is taking place, the B2B, the entire business that we're talking about can be anywhere between 10 to $15 trillion worth of business that can be done. In a market like Singapore, I think we are talking about a few tens of billions of dollars, which can be, actually brought onto the card rails. So, from a landscape in the B2B space, I think this is just the beginning. And it is important to see how we can support the businesses by making them easier to make payments, to accept payments, and to ensure that commerce can happen in a seamless manner.
Correct. That's true. So, yes, and I quite agree that with B2C, more focus was always on B2C payments and digitizing that. So, when it comes to B2B, there was not much which was happening on that digital frontier, and a lot more can happen because if you see, uh, high value transactions happen in B2B payments more than B2C. So, yes, as you correctly said, there is, I think this is just the beginning, and we would see a lot of more things that would be coming up in the near future.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, how can businesses build and maintain trust in this digital landscape when it comes to these financial transactions? Because, as we said, these will be high value transactions. So, does that trust factor being maintained?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we look at payments, and especially, online payments, the biggest concern that a buyer has is if he's going to make a payment online, whether the payment is being made to the right person and to the right account. And when
Okay,
it becomes a high value transaction, the concerns related to the risk, concerns related to fraud that can take place definitely is at the back of the mind of any business person. The second piece is that when we talk about payments through banks, there is that assurance that yes, the payment is being made through a bank, and hence, the payment is assured. But when we are talking about digital payments on card rails, there is that question mark about what happens if this transaction does not go through properly. From a
correct,
supplier side, the concern is that I have already supplied the goods. What if the transaction does not go through, or the card number or the credentials that have been provided are fictitious? So there is definitely an element of risk which both the buyers and the suppliers have. But mind you, there are technologies which have been rolled out by payment networks.
okay,
And coming from the payments background, I can tell you that one of the safest way in which you can transact online is going through card rails. And there are a couple of reasons why I'm saying that. First and foremost, when you look at a commercial card or a purchasing card which is being issued, the bank that is issuing that particular payment option, is doing the due diligence that is required with the entity, the business entity which is going to have that card.
Okay.
Second, there are specific use cases where this commercial card can be used. It is not that we are talking about corporate cards which can be used for travel and entertainment and every other use that a executive would use that card. But there are these specific purchasing commercial cards which are issued which are meant for vendor payments. And
Okay.
then there have been developments again where you are talking about not just a static card which is a pan number, but there are dynamic pans which can be generated, and particular pan can be used only for that particular single transactions. So
Okay.
there are certain checks and balances and fraud risk mitigation measures that the bank which is issuing the card is has always looked at it and has implemented those solutions. Second, the networks are primarily involved, and when the networks come into play, they are also ensuring that the transaction which is going through goes through various checks and balances through the network, and the transaction which is getting authorized is meeting those certain criteria. From
Okay.
a supplier perspective, when you look at it, there is an acquirer, an acquiring bank or an acquirer processor which is also responsible and plays their part. They also do certain checks which are required to be done to ensure that the transaction which is taking place, which is a high value transaction in this case, is meeting the required criteria from a fraud and risk perspective.
Okay.
And over and above that, there are technology solution providers like ourselves who actually look at these transactions, and we also play our part in ensuring that whatever transaction which is being approved is going through the right processes before that transaction is approved and the supplier is paid the amount that is due to him. So
Okay.
from a risk perspective or from a trust perspective, what we are talking about, I think I do believe that there is a significant amount of efforts and checks and balances from a technology standpoint which are put in place to ensure that fraud risk is mitigated.
Correct. That's true. And of course, I'm sure that in case of any such unfortunate incidents, there might be again a streamlined process where uh, the person who has been a victim of the fraud can reach out the proper channel and things can be resolved at
Oh,
that level.
absolutely. Absolutely. I think the first thing that happens is that there is an entire, dispute management process that is put in place. But
Correct.
essentially, in B2B transactions, right, unlike in a B2C environment, we need to recognize the first difference is that both the buyer and the supplier are known to each other. There is a
True.
contract which is already in place, and a card payment is an additional payment mode. That's one. Second, from a B2B payment perspective, again, most of these transactions are initiated by the buyer. So
Correct.
the buyer knows exactly that he has received an invoice for the goods and services that have been delivered to them. He knows exactly what the amount is, and then he initiates that transaction. And that is a big difference from a transaction which is done online, where a consumer is buying goods or services from any merchant, because
Correct.
from that perspective that merchant doesn't know who the customer is, whereas in this case the merchant or the supplier, as we are talking about, they know very well that this particular transaction is being done by so and so. This is the client, and this is the amount that is being billed, and this is the amount that the supplier is going to receive.
Yes. So
So
they are well
in,
guarded.
in a way it's a closed loop, so to say. While it is on the network, it is
Correct.
between a buyer and a supplier who are known to each other. They know what the transaction amount is, and it is as per a contract or a purchase order which has been issued. And
Correct.
hence, from a fraud perspective, at least in my career, I haven't really encountered those cases or instances where a buyer has said that, oh, my transaction went through but it did not go to this particular supplier, or a supplier has come back and said that I did not receive the payment, this was something which has gone to somebody else. So my point is that if we look at today's technology which is being offered for B2B payments, I think it definitely has addressed a lot of issues which look at it from a fraud perspective or from a trust perspective that you're talking about. And these transactions definitely have been vetted and they go through proper checks and balances.
All right. Okay. So I think that is something that many of the listeners or people who are, uh, small scale, mid scale businesses who are going for this, I think that that is a good way of reassurance that they are well guarded and they can, streamline their processes. And I think, of course, when you do digital B2B payments, it is more better and a better streamlined process as compared to the traditional payment methods.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you
Yes,
ask me, prior to trust, I think one of the challenges that we are all facing in the B2B payments, especially when we are talking about payments on card rails, is the limited awareness that businesses have about
exactly.
making payment using the card as a payment tool. Today,
Yes,
an SME business would typically go to a bank, whether it is a small scale bank, whether it is a large bank, looking for commercial loans. They
correct.
would look at, going out in the market, looking at some kind of invoice discounting or bill discounting that they would do, and they would try and fund whatever their requirements are. But the fact is that today commercial card payments as a payment tool has not really penetrated, and there are various reasons for it, right? One, of course, definitely is the awareness.
Awareness,
Second, I
yes,
think, is also traditionally the cost of a transaction on a commercial purchasing card has been higher than the cost of funds. And for an SME business, I think the most important aspect is what is the cost of funds that he is
yeah,
going to incur
controlling,
for managing his working capital.
absolutely.
Even in that perspective, I think what the networks and what the banks are now doing is that they are trying and they have become more and more competitive. So if
Okay,
somebody is looking at having a purchasing card, I think the transaction can be done at a cost effective rate, and they
okay,
can easily compare it with some of these commercial loans that they look for from any of the banks.
okay. So I think that's great. And definitely, as people will be aware of this and as the rates will be met, I guess there would be a significant shift from those traditional methods to the digital
I hope
front.
so. I really hope so. Yes.
So, how can, are there any specific fintech solutions which are gaining more traction in this B2B payment system?
Oh, there have been. As I said, the changes and the transformation that we have seen in the last 3 to 5 years has been significant, and it is just increasing exponentially. Some of the
Correct.
fintechs which I can, talk about have contributed significantly in this particular space. I mean, one we can look at, typically when we are talking about supplier onboarding, right? I mean, when you're talking about making payments using card rails, I think the first thing that the challenge that both the banks as a issuing of the cards or somebody who's acquiring that transaction faces is to onboard merchants, onboard suppliers as merchants, and that itself has seen a significant change
Okay.
in terms of the way the documentation is collected. I mean, I come from the times when, the documentation was physically, it was paper that was collected from the businesses. They used to come into the back office, they would be vetted. Ultimately, it would go for the approval, it will go for credit risk, and the entire end to end process could take anywhere between 6 to 8 weeks. So you can
Correct.
imagine the amount of time it took to
The
onboard a
delay, yes.
merchant before he actually started going live and doing business. Today,
Absolutely.
thanks to this fintechs, the entire end-to-end process has been digitized to a large extent. The documentation collection that can happen, which used to take 6 to 8 weeks, as I talked about, can happen in 4 to 6 days. And
Okay.
you add on, the credit risk approvals that are required. Typically, within 10 working days, you can have any merchant onboarded onto the platform. And
All
there
right.
are some fintechs who do claim that they can do that in 3 to 5 days, which is fantastic. I mean, that is one technology change which we have seen. Second, when it comes to payments, right? The what is important is that payment should not be a standalone system. It has to be
Correct.
integrated with the accounting platform or the accounting system that the business has. So that
Absolutely.
ultimately what you're trying to do is you're trying to simplify the process for that business from an accounting and financial reconciliation perspective. And there are fintechs which have come in into play, who have provided with aggregated accounting packaged solutions, whereby which you just plug it into onto that platform, and you would be able to reconcile your accounting system with the payments which have been made. I think that is phenomenal when it comes to managing resources and ensuring that you don't have to spend time on reconciling your accounts. And
Correct.
likewise, there are other examples as well of other fintechs who have come into play and who have provided innovative solutions. So
All
that's
right.
that's something which I do believe has happened. I mean, just to talk about ourselves also, right? We are into invoice management, and what
Okay.
we are doing is we have created a platform whereby which we provide the buyer the opportunity to come onto the platform, whereby where they can actually see those invoices which have been billed to them, and they will be able to clear those invoices by charging it to the card, the commercial card which has been issued to them. And this entire end to end process is managed digitally. We do have an onboarding process which helps onboard these entities, whether it is the buyer or the supplier. And from a payment perspective, the payment which the supplier has to receive, we need ensure that those payments are made through the acquirers with whom we have tied up. It happens in the very next day. So this
Okay.
entire solution, what we are talking about, is a new capability which can help an SME to actually manage their end-to-end payment cycle in a few days, instead of waiting for those credit periods that we are talking about.
Correct. Absolutely. So, uh, as I can hear from you, there are already a lot of changes and new solutions that have come up, and I'm sure there will be more to come that would significantly change and, as you said, fasten the entire process.
Absolutely, yeah.
Uh, as a business owner, as you mentioned, SMEs who are planning to go for this, so what kind of challenges or opportunities would arise when a business would integrate these digital payments into their workflow?
I think one of the first things that we typically try and address over before getting into the technical challenges is the mindset of the business owner.
True.
As I said, today's businessmen, and you can go to any developing country, they are so engrossed in their day to day operational issues that they hardly have time to look at how they can improve some of the processes which they have been practicing for the last so many years. And
Correct.
the more experienced the business owner, the more rigid their thoughts are, and that's true for any individual, right? So I'm not
I
just saying
agree.
that. So the first thing that we need to and this is exactly what we do, is we try and address that aspect of the challenge that we face, is to give them a perspective, give them a different view of what problems they are facing, and what are the ways in which these issues can be resolved. So that is trying to address the mindset and telling them that, look, there are digital solutions which are available, which can be implemented in spite of how complex your solution is, because for every businessman, his process is the most complex,
That's complex. That's
right?
true.
So what we try and tell them is that if we are able to demonstrate that if we are able to solve some of your issues which are related to payments without disturbing your processes that you are following, because it's just an additional payment option that we're talking about. So that's
Correct.
the first thing that we try to address. Second, that's where the actual challenges start, right? Because any business, and especially the in the SME world, they do not have ERP systems. Most of them operate on systems or platforms that they have procured at one at a time. So there are
Correct.
4 or 5 different systems. There could be an accounting package, there could
Yes.
be a procurement system, there could be an inventory management system, and then there is this entire financial payment system that they have to manage. And all this is being done by limited number of resources.
That's
What
true.
we are trying to do is that we are trying to see how we can provide, solve, if not all, quite a few of these processes that they are doing on different platforms through one platform
One
which
channel.
can help them manage it.
Correct.
And to a large extent, we are able to bring that turnaround when it comes to managing their financial payments and financial reconciliations. And we also are able to provide them with, we do have inventory management system as well, so in terms of supply chain management, so we are able to provide them with that. And that kind of takes away a significant percentage of their resources. Second, I think, when it comes to payments, right, and again in the SME sector, it's whether it is India, whether it is ASEAN markets, right, there is a significant amount of default that happens when it comes to payments. There are so many businesses who write off maybe 5, 6, 10% of their payments, which are receivables, which they need to collect from the market.
Correct.
And this is where we try and help them out by saying that, if you look at the cost that you are incurring through trying to collect payments through the traditional methods, you are going to incur, and you incur, it's not just you are going to incur, but you incur, it's just that the cost is invisible. And what we are trying to demonstrate to them is that, if you go through this process, yes, there are certain charges that you will incur, but at least you will receive the payments. You are able to handle your cash management, you are able to manage your working capital much better, and you can move ahead. So these are some of the issues that we face in terms of managing, the challenges that they have. And what we try and inculcate is, look at have a new perspective to the process and see if this helps in managing your business better.
Correct. Okay. So, as you said, I just wanted to know, since you mentioned that you also have an inventory management system and this, so are the solutions that you provide, let's say if they all have some existing solutions with them already, okay, as you mentioned, they already have maybe a supplier management system and some kind of financial, so can these four different products integrate with one common solution that can be provided? Is that let's say someone does not want to change certain things which they already have, but if they want to get this as an add-on, so can that be integrated?
Well, as I said, when we talk about, let's take the accounting system that they have, and when it comes to payments, right? So today there are two different ways. If we are introducing payment system from on our platform, and they have a separate accounting platform, what we have done is we have actually integrated with an aggregator, through which that entire integration or transfer of information to the accounting package can happen in a seamless manner.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
that kind of makes it transparent for the business owner in terms
Yes.
of making any changes at their end. So there are ways and means in which you can simplify some of these processes. I
Yeah.
cannot say that, if a business owner has 3 or 4 different systems, we will replace it. We don't do that, right? I mean, and that's not the a practical way of doing business. But what we try and do is to see how, whatever packages or systems they are using, how can we help them from a payment standpoint.
That's
You
true.
mentioned about supply chain. Yes, we do have an entire supply chain platform where we are able to provide them with, solutions in terms of inventory management, and
Okay.
that helps them to actually digitize their inventory management control systems. It helps them to reduce the manual workload that they need to do. And what we have done is we have also integrated payments to that logistics supply chain platform. So tomorrow, if a business has to make a payment to their vendors, they can do it using this platform, the payment platform that we have.
Okay. Okay. I think, yeah, that's something that would have like an assurance for everybody, because when they already have something and they are getting a solution which will be integrated with what they already have in a very seamless way. So I guess that
Yes.
clears a major chunk of their reasons to worry about this.
Yeah, and it kind of frees up the resources that they have. And the biggest cost for an SME today is the resources,
That's
because
true.
they will not have that, that flexibility of adding the number of resources just because the business has grown.
That's
So
true.
how do you manage your resources in an effective and efficient manner is important. And what we are trying to do is to provide them with this kind of platform, which actually helps them in managing the business as it keeps growing with the limited number of resources that are available to them.
That's fantastic. So, again, as we were discussing right at the beginning, that we have a globalized business environment. So, in that case, how are these digital B2B payments facilitating cross border transactions?
Oh, that is definitely a very important aspect of any business,
Yes,
because when you look at a buyer and a supplier in this global environment that we're talking about, if you ask me, a significant percentage of the suppliers are not local. You take
true.
any country, right? Whether it is India, whether we are looking at Indonesia, whether you're looking at Philippines, whether we're looking at China, the supplier is residing in one country and the buyer is residing in some other country, and there are different suppliers from different countries which are providing material to a buyer, and that's where
Correct.
the assembly takes place. So from a business to business payment perspective, I think having the ability to manage cross border payments is very, very important. And
Correct.
here I think, let me again split it into two parts. One, the regulator is playing a major role in terms of ensuring that this cross border payments is managed in a very regulated manner. So that is
Okay.
one part. And second, from a business standpoint, coming onto a digital platform, that definitely facilitates to manage these cross border payments. I'll give you a simple example, right? And this is, in my earlier erstwhile role. Today we have marketplaces, right?
Hmm.
These marketplaces sell goods which are available on the website or the marketplace, but these marketplaces have to ensure that they have their goods available either, you know available at a given point in time where they can be shipped, or they
Correct.
have to ensure that the suppliers are able to ship those goods directly to the consumer who's buying it. So
True.
from a marketplace perspective, the complexity of making payments to these different suppliers can be so complex, and quite a few of these are not really local. So
Absolutely.
that is where there are solutions which can be implemented by such marketplaces, where the payment can be made through these purchasing cards, and payments can go directly to these suppliers across these different markets where they are present. And
Okay.
that definitely is a very, very, I would say, managed transaction, where the buyer or the bank which is issuing the card to the buyer, he knows exactly what he is buying from where. And as far as the marketplace is concerned, they know exactly, from which supplier what goods are they buying. And the entire process of reconciling these various payments to these suppliers takes place in a much more efficient manner.
Correct.
So
Again, it's guarded.
everything, yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
This is a card transaction which happens on a purchasing card, and the payments are made to these suppliers in as per whatever the payment terms are, whether it is in 1 day's time or 2 days time. Definitely this can be managed, and the most important part, the entire documentation that is required to support this transaction is made available online. So that is something that ensures that the marketplace as a buyer gets all the information that they need, and they are able to meet the suppliers demands of ensuring payments reach them on time.
Correct. Not only time, and also the cross currency.
Oh, yes, definitely. I mean,
Yeah,
that is something that is taken, that is managed through the network. So we ensure that whatever payments are made in the currency that the supplier is looking for. And
yeah,
it does not matter whether the buyer is sitting in one country and the supplier is based in the other.
true. So, according to you, what steps are businesses taking to ensure compliance with relevant regulations in the B2B payment space?
Well, in the Asia Pacific region, I mean, if you look at Singapore, where I'm based, or a country like India, where the central bank is so actively involved, I think the regulator is at the forefront in terms of ensuring that all these digital payments that we are talking about and the service providers, they go through the licensing process. I mean, you may have heard of payment aggregator, payment gateway, license, which the RBI has been working on very, very, I would say diligently with various aggregators. That is a very comprehensive process that is being followed in a market like India. Similarly, in Singapore, the monetary authority of Singapore is following the payment service providers review, and they are providing licenses only for those who are competent enough to deliver those services. So I think the regulator is definitely playing a significant role in ensuring that all the participants which are there in this B2B payments are meeting the required, not only technical, but I think from a compliance perspective and from a monetary compliance perspective, they meet the requirements, and only then they are provided those licenses to operate as a aggregator or a service provider.
Okay.
And this is very, very important, given the fact that these are all online transactions. It is important that all those checks and balances are taken in place. And what has happened because of that is that most of the participants, they are focusing more on compliance, and this is something that we have seen in the last 3 to 5 years. The amount of focus that an organization puts from a compliance perspective, from a risk management perspective, and ensuring the policies are all documented and they are reviewed very time and again or periodically. I think that is ensuring that all these service providers are really ensuring that their back end, back office requirements are met, and they are complying with whatever the regulator is asking the participants to implement.
Okay. So, I think again, once we hear all of these, uh, we can say that businesses who are wanting to adapt to this new age technology of B2B payments, they should be knowing that everything is in place. The regulatory offices or the organizations, they are doing their due diligence. So, of course, the risk factor, as you mentioned, would be there, but it is significantly improvised and minimized, I would say, uh, in order to ensure a very healthy and a safe transaction between the buyer and the supplier.
Yeah, I think so. I think B2B transactions, if you ask me, are far, far safer than a B2C transactions for various
Correct.
reasons that we discussed.
Yes,
And
absolutely. I agree.
as we speak, new capabilities, new technologies, the regulatory requirements are coming into play, which are all in the direction to ensure that any B2B transaction that is taking place online, whether it is domestic or whether it is cross border, is meeting the required criteria for it to be a genuine transaction. And the entire effort of the ecosystem is to see how more and more transactions can be digitized while ensuring that the fraud levels are minimal.
Absolutely. So, lastly, what trends do you foresee in the future of B2B payments, and how should a business be prepared for these changes? You already mentioned what are the significant things that are coming up, but what does the future hold for all of us?
As I said, Honestly, the B2B payments landscape has just scratched the surface. I mean, when I look at the potential and the volumes that, and you have different consulting firms talking huge numbers, right? I mean, even if it is not 50 trillion, and if we are looking at 5 trillion, that's a significant number that we are talking about.
Absolutely.
My take is that we are moving in the right direction. Now, going ahead, whether the technology changes significantly, whether we move from card, which, as I said, that it is no longer just a static card, there are, dynamic cards which are being issued. These are digital virtual cards which actually are applicable only for a transaction. This is something which has been, introduced recently. Going ahead in the next 3 to 5 years, we may have completely different technologies. I mean, honestly, if I were to have a crystal ball and look at it, I I will say that what we are doing today may not be relevant 5 years down the line. But I do know that the technology that is going to be used 5 years down the line will be addressing some of the core issues which are related to risk, which are related to fraud management, which are related to simplifying the end to end process and ensuring that the cost of that transaction will come down significantly. I think that's how this ecosystem has been working, and it will continue to move in that direction. I know of markets, countries which are doing away with issuance of checks, or at least charging extra. That
All
is
right.
one way of trying to move and change the mindset. But I think it is the most efficient process that is going to win in the long run. So, as long as the process that you are introducing is going to make things simpler for a buyer and a supplier, they are going to move towards that. Mind you, there is a cost, but businesses, there are large number of businesses who would prefer to have making a payment or incurring that cost to ensure that there is peace of mind and that entire process is managed in a seamless manner. At the end of
Absolutely.
the day, a business owner wants to focus on the business and not look at all the other issues which are, which are incidental. And that is how I see the payments ecosystem contributing to the growth of B2B payments and businesses at globally. And hopefully, I do believe that we will be able to see that in the next 3 to 5 years.
Absolutely. From the way you say it, I can see that the future holds a lot in store for all of us. So, Mr. Balkrishna Pangam, thank you so much for this wonderful discussion today. It's been amazing to hear all of these insights from you, and the way you have so effortlessly brought it down in very simple terms for everyone to understand the importance of B2B payments, where it is, and what the future has in store for us. So, thank you so much for all of these insights.
Thank you. My pleasure, and it was absolute pleasure to be on this program.
So, signing off, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us on this exploration of the dynamic evolution within B2B payments. Let's continue our quest to revolutionize the landscape, embracing innovation and driving towards a future where businesses thrive in the digital realm. Stay tuned for more insights, discussions, and revelations as we navigate this transformative journey together. Until next time, keep pioneering and redefining success in the world of B2B payments. Thank you so much.
Thank you.